This is the ACE professional bookkeeper model. This has been developed for growing sole traders, established businesses, landlords with multiple income streams, or any businesses who are seeking greater accuracy and control over their bookkeeping. So with all of these files, you will only ever see one sheet at a time. So we're currently looking at the main menu. On this sheet, there's lots of different buttons, as you can see. As you click on the buttons, it will take you to the relevant area of the file. So you don't have lots of sheets to navigate between. The blue buttons here and the setup, these are the buttons where you need to input information. The green buttons at the bottom, these are all reports that will be generated as a result of what your inputs into the blue sheets. The dark blue ones are just sort of greater controls we have as well. So we would always start at the setup. So if we click on setup, it takes you to the setup page. This contains basically a list of lots of different lists of information that will provide the background for the remainder of the process. So these first two columns are for you to enter your expense types, and every single expense type you can put in the green cells. The green cells indicate that you can edit the cells. You can put whatever descriptions you like, something that's meaningful for you. The purple column here are the HMRC categories, because every single expense type has to be allocated to one of HMRC's predefined categories. So if you click on the drop down list on any of those purple cells, you'll see that's your list you get to choose from HMRC, and you have to choose one, okay? Otherwise your HMRC submission won't be correct. So I'd recommend doing this at the very beginning. So complete these lists. You can edit them as you go if you need to. These columns here are for us to enter the client name, the email address, and then the physical address. All of this is relevant for raising invoices, because the email address will be used to send the invoice, and the address goes on the invoice, obviously. This column here is for your income type, so you can differentiate between your different types of income. You've also got payment type. So we've got cash, which you can't edit because it's not green. You've got 3 different bank accounts. And this is the main difference in this file between this and the Essentials version. You can edit what the bank accounts are called. So if I just change that one to current, I'll just change the one for now. You won't notice any change here, but when we go back to the main menu, you'll see that this button here has changed from bank 1, because this is bank 2 and bank 3. It now is renamed as current. Also on these green buttons, these are unallocated buttons. So this is for bank 2 and bank 3. That will then be renamed as you've named the bank account. So it just helps to personalize it a little bit and keep it a bit more something that you're familiar with. Okay, so there's our setup complete. We can then go into income. I've already put in a row of income. I've put an invoice in already. So we've got the date, and as you click on there, it pops up. It's got to be in the format of DD /MM/YY. We can also, in this file, we can include debtors brought forward. So if you've got debtors brought forward from a previous year, we could literally there select debtors brought forward, and it turns the whole row orange. It also means that income will be deducted from your profit and loss, because it's money brought forward. It's been accounted for in a previous year. I'll delete that for the time being. So we've got the date, we put in the invoice number, we can select the client off the pick list from the setup. We can also select the invoice type from setup as well. We can enter whatever description we need. That description will appear on the invoice as well, so make sure it's meaningful and relevant. The yellow cells contain formulas, so if I click on that to edit, it tells me the sheet is protected and I can't edit that cell. Okay, and you also can't see the formula, so it just keeps it safe because you can't remove anything you're not supposed to. You can mark a yes or no on VAT, whether the invoice contains VAT. If you said yes, it will then calculate based on the net value of 1,000. It'll calculate 20% of that net amount. If I switch that back to no, it then switches VAT to 0 because it calculates at 0. Let me put it back on yes, because what you will notice here in this paid column changes automatically. So it's saying yes because I put something else in. If I change that to no, what you'll notice is it says part paid. Okay, so I'll come back to that shortly. Let me put that back on yes as well. Okay, we can also indicate which bank account that we paid this amount from, and it just helps us to keep a track. The remaining yellow columns here, they literally will calculate, I think it's based on 7 days, so the due date. So if it's not been paid, so if it's not been paid, it will calculate when it's due to be paid, how many days has been outstanding for, and then what category of debtor days it falls into, so 0 to 30 days, 30 to 60, etc. These subsequent, there's 2 columns for each bank account, so this you can see is current, bank 2 and bank 3. they literally will populate. Let me just move across a little bit. They will populate the payment date from the current account and the amount. So we can see on this one that on the 10th of April we received £1,200. Okay, I'll come to where that's come from in a second. And if we've received money into either of the other two bank accounts, they will feed through into these columns here. And the bank difference will calculate if there's a difference in value. So let me go back to this VAT. If I were to say no on VAT there, so the total amount we should be receiving is £1,000, but what this is saying is we've received £1,200. So the difference will say we've received £200 too much. So it just, again, helps you to know what your outstanding balances are for chasing. So that's it for the income. You would literally put a new row in and put in all of your income. If I go back to the main menu, once your income's in, we can go to this green button here for Generate Invoice. So if I click on Generate Invoice, I can select the invoice number. There's only one to select from right now, but you'll see it populates with the client name and the client address, the invoice date, 10th of April, and the invoice number. It also populates the description as per the income sheet and the total amount. It then also will include VAT if it's relevant or not, and the total amount here. On this section here, this is about how to get paid, very important. We can edit these green cells. You can put in your account name there, your sort code, your account number, and you can also edit this cell here. So it currently says payment is now due. You can edit that and say payment is due in 30 days or 7 days, or it's overdue, or whatever you need to do. You can edit those cells there. Okay, once you've generated your invoice, you've got these three buttons we can press. So we can print it, we can save it, which will save it in PDF format into the same folder that this file is saved into, or we can click email. It will then save the invoice as a PDF into the same folder, but it will also go into Outlook and generate an email, and it will include the email address for this client from the setup, and it will include the body of the email and attach the PDF. Okay, so that's a complete sort of invoice generation function there. So if we go back to the main menu, we can then input costs. So costs, very similar to income. We've got the creditors brought forward here, so we could indicate that this is something from a previous year. It turns orange, and obviously it will be excluded from the P&L. Let me delete that for now. We've got the ref column. The ref col, you can't edit those because it's in a yellow cell, but I would recommend taking your receipt and then scribbling that reference number onto it, just so and then file them in that order so you can find them easily later if you need to. So here we've just entered in the date, we've put in the name of the supplier, we've selected the type of the pick list, we've put in any old description we need to, we've said whether it's pay VAT, yes or no. I've said yes in this instance, put the net value in, it's calculated the VAT at 20% and the total amount. In this cost, we can also overwrite the VAT element just in case there isn't VAT on the total net amount. We can just overwrite that VAT figure if we need to. Similarly, if there's any roundings. We also have the payment type. We can say how we've paid for it. If we were to mark that as cash, it would automatically come up as paid, or we've got the other bank accounts if we needed to. Like the income, it also gives me the due date, the number of days outstanding and the creditor days. And then we've got the same 6 columns at the end here with the bank details of payment date and payment value. And then also it will come up with the difference as well. So it just helps you to keep track of where you're at with your expenses. So we can then go back to the main menu. That is now, so that's your income and your costs. We've then got 3 bank accounts. I'm just going to show you one of them because they're all the same. If I click on current, what you can see here is the first row we have is our opening balance. So we can't actually edit that opening balance. I think that was locked for editing, or maybe it's not. It will be. We can put in our opening balance. So I've said we've got £500 in, which gives me a balance of £500. I've then said that we've received some income on the 10th of April. Now, when I change from the type here, if I change that, if I just put it back to bank charges, you'll see this cell here. In fact, let me delete these and I'll do these again. So let's say we have a bank transaction and it's income received. As soon as I choose income received, this cell here turns blue and there's a key at the top. So that means we need to put an income reference in. So we need to put in the invoice number that was paid. So I could put in here that it was XLA's paid that. The invoice number is 111, just because I remembered it. 10th of April 26, and how much we received in was, I think it was £1,200, I think. Okay, so I've put that in there now. If I go back to the income, and I can navigate just clicking that button there, it will show me that our invoice number 111, was a total of £1,000. So I put in 1,200, so there's a 1,200. So it's saying it's part paid. If I go back to the bank, back to current, and I change that to £1,000, and go back to the income, you'll see that's now paid, because the amount we should have received was £1,000, and the amount we have received is also £1,000. Okay, so that reconciles that. So the beauty of this model means that we can actually reconcile all of our bank transactions between all our costs and our income. So let me just put some costs in, and let's say we paid the train bill here. So cost paid, I put in the description, I'll just say train. I can't remember what the reference was. I think the date was the same and the amount was 120, I think. Let me go back to costs. So costs, it was 240. The reference was number 1. Okay. So if I go in here and I change that to 240 and I say the reference was number 1, I'm now allocating that transaction against that cost ref. So there's reference 1. Total should have paid was 240, and the total we did pay was 240. So it's yes, paid. Okay, similarly, if I were to put in there 200, the cost would have come up as part paid, and the difference at the end would have been the 40. So there's still 40 left to pay. So this is great if you do sort of receive payments in instalments. You don't receive just one payment. You can just keep putting each transaction in the bank allocated to that same reference. Okay, so the current, so this is basically saying our current bank balance is 1,300. So the key is literally just to reconcile that to your actual bank balance. Okay, you can then put your other bank balances in, and that works exactly the same. We then have these 3 sheets where we can look at anything that's not allocated. So let me go back to current. If I was to, let me just remove these allocations. If I go to unallocated current there, this is now, it's going to show me these sections here. These are your costs that have not been included in the cost sheet. So there's a £200 payment to the train that hasn't been allocated to a cost. This section here is any payments received with no matching income. So this shows me that £1,000 received by XLAs, but it's not been allocated to an invoice. Okay, so we can go back to the current account there, and I could literally put in the numbers 111 and then 1 there. And then if we go back to unallocated current, they should both be showing now zeros. Yes. Okay, so now we know everything is allocated correctly, so that's good. So, and those 3 sheets there are just for double checks. We've already generated the invoice. Ultimately, we can then go to the profit and loss. So this is the P&L, and as you can see, there's a column for every month from April 26 to April 27. It includes total sales there. You can see in April, if you scroll down, you can see total costs there for travel. They've pulled in there. We've got total sales is 1,000, no cost of sales, so the gross profit's £1,000, less our total cost of 200 gives us a net profit of 800. There's no annual investment allowance, so it's still net profit after investment allowance is 800. Tax-free allowance is 872, so we don't need to pay any tax on less. We've still got £72 tax-free allowance, so there's no tax or NI generated for that month. You'll also notice this works tax and NI cumulatively, but these rows here will be working out for you total tax due, so I'd always just make sure you've got that sat in the bank waiting to pay. You also get your net profit and your gross profit percentages worked out as well. So they're sort of useful figures to have a little look at. This sheet will populate automatically. You can't edit anything on here. If I go back to the main menu, we also have a dashboard, and what the dashboard does is it pulls in just little summaries of everything. So we start off with invoices, and you can see we get monthly invoice values. We then get invoices by type if we populate the type. So that will show you which different types of income have been the biggest for you. We then have the same thing with costs, so we get total cost by month, and we also get costs split by type, so you can see where your biggest expenses have been. We then get profit, and that's monthly, and you can see every month that's what our profit's building up to be. And then at the bottom we get aged debtors and creditors, so it'll show you in different chunks of time how who we owe money to and who owes us money, which is really useful to have. So they're just snapshots of that dashboard. We also have the HMRC submission. So if I click on here, this is just a template from the bridging software from Absolute Tax Filer. The green cells we can edit, so we start with month type. We can either have it as a standard, so it ends on the 6th of the month, or we can switch it to a calendar, so it'll just be the last days of the month, start from the beginning to the end. So whatever month type and quarter you choose here in these two cells, you'll see the start and end date in yellow cells. You can't edit those. They are generated automatically. So you can see, because it's on standard, the start is the 6th of April and it ends on the 5th of July. If I switch that to calendar, you'll see it switches to the 1st of April and finishes on the 30th of June. So it's entirely up to you what your preference is to look at the dates there. You can obviously enter in your bridging ID, your name, national insurance number, your business name. All of these things are required for the submission to HMRC. The rest of the sheets, the rest of the cells, sorry, these grey cells, these are automatically populated. So for Q1, it's pulled in, that's your total income. Here it will give you by HMRC category. This is why it's important to select one in the setup. It will give you the total balances for each category of the total expenses. Obviously there's your total income, that's your total expenses, and then it nets them off. So your total net profit or loss for the period is going to be 800 in this instance. The only other thing we can edit here is our disallowable expenses, and in these cells by category we could say if any are disallowable. So we may well say travel costs, £100 was say for personal use, so we'll take £100 out, and what you'll see here is the total 200 is still in there, but it takes off the disallowable in this cell here, so it gives us 100 in the consolidated expenses. So you can edit those if you need to. Once you are done editing the sheet and you're happy that that is your submission for Q1, you can literally click this yellow button, generate HMRC submission, and it will save a whole separate file within this the folder that this file is saved into, and that is what you will then use to upload for your HMRC submission into your bridging software. And that's it, dead easy, all done. The final button on here is your trial balance. If I just click on there, it will ask you for a password. This trial balance really is what your accountant will use. So the password is only there because it's not probably going to be very relevant to you for you to look at. But if I click OK for now, there's no password at the moment. Ultimately, what it does is it pulls in all of the numbers from the whole model and just proves to your accountant that it all reconciles. And this is generally what your accountant would use as a starting point to produce your accounts. Probably, I mean, it's just a raft of numbers at this stage for you. The important thing to notice is that these two numbers at the bottom of columns D and E should be the same, and there should be a balance of 0. So that's good. However, this should tell you there's issues anyway. If I go back to the main menu, you've got checks here, so I can click checks. It will literally run through everything and make sure everything's allocated correctly and pop up if it is and say all checks are complete and all data has been entered correctly. Just to show you what would happen if it wasn't, if I go into costs and I don't put a type in, for example, that's one thing that would make it shout. If I run checks now, it should tell me there are costs without types in column E. Please enter types as necessary. So if I click OK now, it'll take me to the cost sheet. It's filtered by all of the rows that's missing something in column E for type. So now I can just populate that. So that's going to be travel. Go back to the main menu and run checks again, it's happy again, and it will say everything's good. Okay, so that is your ACE professional bookkeeper model.